The eagle-eyed of you may notice that I am wearing a red shirt today, which can only mean one thing if you paid attention in your English classes. That's right, we're going to spoiler territory. Last night I went to see the Backrooms movie and it was really good. I didn't know what to expect with it really, but I was a big fan of the YouTube series that Kane released God knows how long ago. That's about pretty much most of my Backrooms interactions. I played a few Roblox games when I was younger. I got gifted a Backrooms game by one of my friends that we played for about an hour, but that's about the extent of it. All my main knowledge comes from Kane Pixels' YouTube series. So when I heard that he and A24 were working together to make a movie, I had some pretty good expectations for it. I was hoping it would reach all the levels that the YouTube one did, and it really did. I really enjoyed it, but I do still have a few issues, not necessarily the worst issues you can find in a film, but issues regardless. Let's start off by saying what it did good. I think the tone and atmosphere of the entire film is perfect. I think it does falter a little bit to the end, but for the most part, it is just an incredibly unnerving, creepy, unnatural experience, which is precisely what you associate with the Backrooms. The set design is phenomenal. They really captured the Backrooms perfectly. I believe the Kane Pixel series was fully CGI rendered. Like, I don't think there's much practical involved other than maybe the footage before the clipping. But everything in the Backrooms that he made, I believe, is fully CG. Makes sense. But this time they actually use practical sets and it feels the exact same, just higher quality. Because the CGI can obviously get away with it because all the found footage was done on a little camcorder type screen, like really old school, like the 3:4 aspect ratio. Was it 3:4? I don't know. Which is something this movie also does a few times. It has the whole camcorder, like POV thing. It opens to one, we get a section midway through the movie. And I'm glad they didn't do the entire thing. I think that would have been a bit tougher to watch, a bit slower, but it just blends the two really well and they both match perfectly for what they're doing. The quality of the craft when it comes to filming this thing, like the cinematography, the lighting, everything is just phenomenal. Generally a few of those shots are wallpaper material. The way it's lit, the way everything's put into frame is just so incredibly meticulously well done. And the acting is also super. I think they do an incredible job. And to see such a project, like, this is very much just a guy who made a YouTube series that was massively successful now gets his limelight in cinema and he absolutely like smashes it out of the park. Honestly, rivals a lot of esteemed directors nowadays. Like, that's the levels we're talking in terms of quality. Now, it does have its flaws. I think easily the weakest parts of this movie is probably the characterization of some of them. You can see the characters, you can see what their arcs are. You can get that experience, but I think that a lot of the things that they were going for would have much further benefited from more screen time. For example, the protagonist, Clark, he is someone who, his psyche's not the best. He's, he can get irrationally angry, can never accept the blame. He goes out drinking, he's always working, and he's constantly demeaning to those around him. He thinks he's better than everyone else. He has an ego problem. You can tell that from the movie. I'm saying it now. I would have preferred to see that fall into insanity throughout the entire movie. Or like, not, well, we do see it kind of, but it just feels like a bit jumpy. There's like this big jump in time between two parts. And I just did not notice until, like, she asks, how long have you been here? Then I, like, kind of put the piece, like, oh, he's been here a while. Like, they do a little shot to try and showcase that with all the mail at the door. I didn't really get that first. But yeah, that jump just felt a little jarring to me, but I would have preferred more screen time. And I think what I really would have loved with this movie is it to be a mini-series instead of a movie. Obviously, it's cool, theatrical release. But the episodical whole element, you can tell there are some elements which are just feel like they were like something from an episodical series. Because we get a flashback sequence which is like, well, we watched this like maybe 20, 30 minutes ago. No one's forgotten it. It's pretty crucial actually. But they still flash back anyway. And it just feels like it's like, oh, that was from last episode. We're on a new episode, so let's quickly cut back to it. It feels like the movie was produced to be a series, but then may have been reduced in scope to be a film. That's just my take. But I think it would have been really cool seeing it a mini series, kind of take some more time with the characters, because for the you only get two characters that we really focus on, and that's Mary and Clark. Mary being his therapist, who clearly has her own trauma. I honestly, I can't tell if I'm right in this or not, but I thought she'd been to the back rooms before with her whole trauma things, like with the like the whole patched up windows, the clutter everywhere in the room, and then the door breaking down at the end of the nightmare. Obviously, that was, I believe that's probably more likely just to be something's wrong, or I have like a bad feeling about this type thing. For me, I took it like she'd been in the back rooms, like when her and her mother, when she was younger, her and her mother clipped into the back rooms and then had to survive. Like she even goes, there's these things like I was certain she had some tie, or maybe even her mother had been there or something. But that just kind of, it turns out it was just some of her own trauma, which I felt was just overall quite confusing and could have been better. And I think it would have been clearer or more interesting if we'd had more time with her. I would have really loved this as a miniseries, especially because subliminal spaces such as the back rooms where logic is its own thing and nothing makes sense to you, but you maybe get a fraction of more understanding, as they say towards the end, if they can even understand a fraction more. I think also one thing it does well for the most part is the monster. You never see it until like the last 10-15 minutes of the movie, and I think that's a really great thing. Humans will always be afraid of the unknown. We're both enthralled by it, which is why we keep watching, but we're also terrified, which is why you get that anxiety while watching. And the movie nails that pretty perfectly. On watching it, it was unnerving, but it wasn't scary, in my opinion. It was just like, oh, he's a bit creepy. That's about it. And then once we kind of got through that whole sequence, it was just like, whatever. When I was like laying in bed last night just thinking about the movie, it was a lot creepier in my head though. Like having a perfect well, not perfect, like a estranged replica of yourself. I mean, and that just brings me on to another thing thinking about it now. The monster ends up looking like Clark, and I found that really interesting. I want to see. My take on it is because he's so kind of simple, he just yearns to exist. That's why he is the most perfect copy. He doesn't have anything complex or too complex about him. I'm sure he has his ego issues, but that monster is everything he wants to be because it doesn't copy perfectly his ego issues. He just wants to exist. He just wants to go around in this place. He wants to exist like furniture, which that's a bit of symbolism with him obviously being stuck in the furniture selling business. It does kind of like feel wasted with his whole plot point of wanting to be an architect and stuff, like, but I also kind of get it. There is definitely a psychological element which they're trying to reflect. I've experienced it a few times, that desire to sometimes just want to do no more than exist. Sometimes everything feels overwhelming, but we never really get too big an exploration of that in the movie, other than that like monologue section, which is kind of honestly the very last act of the movie is where I think it's the weakest. I think the first two parts much better. I said much greater. As I say, those are just some small complaints. The movie has flaws. Every movie does. It even has some like, oh, but it's to get the plot rolling type things, like, why didn't he just grab a little bit of evidence and then go back to it to prove he's not great? Why didn't he just take this to something else instead of exploring it himself? What compels him to do that? Like, there were four characters who could have done that, and none of them did. Mary especially should have, but yeah. That's just to get the plot rolling. Obviously, you don't have a plot if people make smart choices in horror movies. That's always been the case. It still will be the case. There is just one thing I would also like to praise though, so we don't end on the negative bandwagon. The soundtrack is phenomenal. They do an incredible job. The soundtrack sounds diegetic, if that makes sense. You can't tell what noises are from the back rooms and what's actually part of the soundtrack. Obviously, when you listen further, you know it's soundtrack. But that unnerving feeling of how diegetic it all sounds. For context, diegetic means in this, like, it's actually in the world on screen. Non-diegetic means only the audience can hear it. There we go, clarification for you. But yeah, the sounds feel so reminiscent of something you could hear it roaming the back rooms, that you can't tell what's real and what's soundtrack. And that's perfect. It really builds the atmosphere, builds the tension. My heart rate through that movie was constantly up and down. That was really fun to see on my watch afterwards. But yeah, really, really well done. The movie, to put it simply, is great. It's perfectly crafted, really, really well written for the most part. I think obviously some flaws, some rushed parts, but overall still a really enjoyable movie that is well worth going to see. And yeah, I'm really, really happy with what Kane Pixels managed to do. And if they do another, I'd be intrigued, but I feel like it can never answer my questions now, like why were Clark and the entity, I think that it's called Mr. Backrooms. One of my friends would tell me Kane Pixels said in an interview, or Kane Parson, I don't know which one he prefers to go by. Yeah, that's not my thing to worry about. What happened to Clark over that however long time period he was just roaming with it? Why didn't it attack him initially? It's never a really too bad of a thing when a movie or TV show leaves you wanting more. But in this case, that is the biggest weakness for me in this film. I just want to know more. So that's about it. I've been away from YouTube for a while, but I'm pretty much done with university now, so maybe I'll make more videos from now on. But also, this movie I really wanted to talk more about this movie. Saw it with some friends, my brother. We've just been talking about it after we watched it, like all our takes on it and stuff, and that really got the fuel going for this video. So yeah, that's about it. See you around.